Hi everybody, this is Ms. Bond here again, and we're continuing our series on analyzing argument. And the focus today is on evidence types as well as the breakdown in understanding evidence through the form of logical fallacies. And so let's get started. First, it's important to remember that any evidence that is used needs to be both relevant, accurate, as well as sufficient. In relation to relevancy, it needs to, all evidence needs to apply specifically to the argument that you are talking about. You don't want to have evidence that's not at all related to what you are speaking about. That's very, very important. You want to make sure that whatever it is that you're talking about is has some type of evidence that backs it up to the degree that it seems to be appropriate for whatever it is that it is. Second, it needs to be accurate in relation to, you don't want to misquote something, you don't want to use things that are out of context. That's often done in political campaign when people have clips of candidates' speeches or sayings or write-ups in newspapers, but only take the part that makes them sound bad, but don't talk about the rest of the quotes, the rest of the speech, the rest of the article that pinpoints how they actually were in disagreement with whatever originally came out of their mouths. So you want to make sure that things are accurate for sure, and that it's not misrepresented. You also want to make sure you use sources that are credible. You don't necessarily want to use all of your sources as being all-star hip-hop or TMZ or something to that nature, because that's a matter of ethos for sure. The fact that these people's vantage point, or those persons' vantage points, are very biased and they are slanted to a very specific degree and don't give a very even-keeled description of whatever it is that you're talking about. And also you want to be mindful of your audience in relation to your sources. You want to use sources that your audience will relate to, will understand, will buy into. Also, your evidence needs to be sufficient. You need enough of it. You can't just have one source. You can't just have one piece of evidence. You have to have multiple avenues of backup. Now, connected to having evidence that's relevant, accurate, and sufficient, you also are going to sometimes come across areas where there's weakness in an argument. And we're going to talk about briefly the three categories that those types of weaknesses can fall into. Just so that everybody is clear, when you have that breakdown or weakness in an argument or evidence, that's called a fallacy, usually a logical fallacy, and that's faulty logic, where there's a failure to make a logical connection between the claim and the evidence. It's like claim is parallel to evidence, and there's something that's just not working out very well. And it's really important to understand logical fallacies. There's so many of them, but to be able to recognize that there is some weakness in the evidence that's supporting your argument, because it can help you identify weak points in other people's argument, and also it can help you to revise or strengthen your own argument, so that when you are trying to persuade someone or something to do something or go somewhere or to think some specific way, then your argument will be a lot stronger and more likely to be followed. Now, there are many types of fallacies, too many to count at this point in time. However, I'm going to go over three major categories with you right now. And do not fear, I'm going to go into greater detail with the types of fallacies and specific examples to support them in another lecture. And you'll see that one uploaded shortly. So the first type is those fallacies of relevance. Excuse me for my scratchy voice. These fallacies deal with the fact that evidence that is not relevant to the claim that is being presented. The first that's listed here is a red herring, and a red herring is a broader category. There are a number of different specific fallacies that fall under this. But basically what a red herring is when you use evidence that's completely irrelevant to the topic with the purpose of avoiding the original topic. So one type of red herring fallacy is an ad hominem, which means to against the man or to the man, where you switch the focus from the argument, whatever this argument happens to be about the topic, the position, and instead you focus it, you turn the argument over to the character of the speaker, of the other side. We see this lots of times in political speeches, debates, especially when you have candidates who, instead of talking about the issues, global economy, the environment, war, healthcare, instead of talking about those things, they start to attack each other. You didn't give this, you were seen here, you had an affair there. Faulty analogy is another type of irrelevant evidence type, where you focus on irrelevant similarities between two things. And this is typically an appeal to pathos as well as a red herring. And what you want to ask yourself is the questions: do the similarities between these things outweigh the similarities? If the dissimilarities outweigh them, then it's a faulty analogy. Do the similarities fit and highlight the point, or simply add an emotional appeal? If it's only to add an emotional appeal, it may very well be a faulty analogy. In fallacies of accuracy, you're using inaccurate evidence, and so you may use a straw man, where you're picking on a oversimplified example of whatever it is that you're talking about, with the sole purpose of ridiculing it or refuting it. But the issue is much larger than that. So you're talking, instead of talking about global warming specifically, you start pinpointing something about a rainy season. Okay, that's not what we were talking about. We were talking about global warming in general, not a rainy season. But you threw the rainy season in there to act as a straw man because you could easily defeat it. Also, either or, which is a false dilemma fallacy, where you present two extreme options as the only possible choices. So if a teenager engages in premarital sexual relations, then they are either going to have a baby or spend eternal damnation in some place that they don't want to be in. Those are two very different extremes, and both are negative, but there's a whole bunch of other gray area that could and probably do occur, but neither one of them has been presented as a possibility. And then finally, we have our fallacies of insufficiency, where it's just not enough. So in a hasty generalization, there's just not enough evidence to support a specific conclusion. And we can think about stereotypes as hasty generalizations, where you look at one instance and then make a broad conclusion in relation to it. That's never enough. You never want to make a conclusion based on one instance. And also circular reasoning, where all you do, actually there's no evidence at all to support whatever it is you're talking about. You're just repeating the claim. Hot dogs are good because they're tasty. There's no evidence supporting that. Good and tasty actually are synonyms for one another. And so you've just circled around and you haven't actually given any substance to it. Now that concludes this idea of evidence and the need for it to be relevant, accurate, and sufficient, and what happens when there's a breakdown in any of the three. You have what you call fallacies. Fallacies of relevance, fallacies of accuracy, and fallacies of insufficiency. And we're going to go over those specific types of fallacies in the next lecture, as well as those different types of evidence specifically. First-hand evidence, second-hand evidence, and what those things include specifically. So stay tuned for those. Take care.